When the day never came. This story contains disturbing themes. Viewer discretion is advised. I don't know what happened. It began on a normal day. I was heading to work at a local bookstore. The sun was bright in the sky, and everything was like usual. I went to my local coffee store to grab my morning coffee before work. Not Starbucks. It's one of those family-run places. I like the close-knit atmosphere. I ordered my iced coffee, talked to Justin, the local barista, and I have to admit I used to have a massive crush on him. I kept walking to work, clocked in, and put my drink behind the counter before looking at the list of the things I needed to do. My job was relatively easy. Sort books, give customers reviews and recommendations, clean the store, take payments. It was good. There were more clouds in the sky and it was growing darker. It looked as though a storm was rolling through, which wasn't strange for this time of year. By the late afternoon, it was dark like nighttime. I worked my full hours and stepped outside. The car park was quiet. No sounds, nor signs of anyone. There were no people talking or walking. All the cars were parked by the side of the road. No birds, no pets, nothing. I had to fight the urge to go back into the bookstore and hide. I hurried to my car and drove home. It was the same on the streets around my home. Completely silent, with only the streetlights to light the way. No one else was on the streets. All the cars except one were parked. At one of the intersections, the traffic lights were flashing all the colors at once, and strangely there were two cars parked in the middle. There had been a collision, but there was no one there. No police or ambulances. Nothing. I slowly drove past to get a closer look. There was glass on the ground, but no signs of blood or a struggle. I drove home. Everything was the same, just eerily quiet. I didn't feel comfortable leaving my car in the driveway and parked in the garage. My house was dead silent. It looked like my boyfriend hadn't come home just yet. The house was dark. None of the lights were on except for the TV in the lounge room. I could hear the faint sound of a newscast. I put my bags and books down on the kitchen table, walked back into the lounge room, and saw there was a sharp change in weather that was causing odd behavior from people. Citizens were told to remain in their homes, not to go out, and to keep the use of communication devices to a minimum. There were two things that stood out. One, to make as little noise as possible, and two, not to let anyone besides the authorities inside their homes. These weren't the usual security broadcasts. Not going out made sense, but the rest? Why couldn't you reach out to your loved ones, or let them inside the house? It didn't make sense. I checked my phone for any missed calls or messages. Nothing. It wasn't like the people in my life not to message or try to call me. I tried sending a message to my boyfriend. It said, "Hey, do you know what's happening? Love you. Stay safe. Bye." I pressed send. I got a message saying the message couldn't be sent. Maybe the system was overloaded with people trying to reach their families. I wasn't sure. All except the noise from the TV. I couldn't hear anything else. It was all too silent. I figured that Jeff must have decided to stay at work, rather than ride this out, or try to make the trip home. I checked the house, just to be safe. Still, there was no sign of him. I made sure all the doors and windows were locked. It may have been overly cautious, but I didn't want to take the chance. I used a torch or a flashlight to light my way. I didn't want to risk lighting the house up, and went into the kitchen to take a large knife from the counter. I hate to say it. I was scared, but there was something about this that was exhilarating. I felt alive. My boring, mundane life had some excitement. I went up to my bedroom, put my torch on my bedside table, and locked the door. Before I curled up in bed, I took a peek outside into the streets, and again, it was quiet. I didn't want to sleep. My body was pumped and ready to defend myself from any would-be attackers, but I got changed, curled up in bed and went to sleep. My dreams were erratic. I woke up in the dark and looked at my phone. 7 a.m. This wasn't normal. The sun should be up. I rubbed my eyes and went to the window. It was nighttime outside. The street was the same. Or so I thought until I saw a shadowy figure move through the street. It had a humanoid shape. It stumbled around with long forearms and had no other real distinct shape to speak of. It loped on all fours, hiding behind different cars and items left in the street. What the hell was this? I heard a low groan that ended in a gasp in the distance. I wasn't sure if it came from whatever this was. Suddenly, it turned its head and looked directly at me. I froze and felt the air sucked out of me. It made a sharp, twisting turn. If it was human, it would have broken their back and made a fast lope toward my house. "No," I whispered. I went and grabbed the knife, feeling safer with a weapon in my hand. Anything was better than nothing. I couldn't see where it was now. I figured it was downstairs, trying to find a way in, and I picked up my phone. Surely this was an emergency, enough to call the police, or someone who could help me. I had reception. I dialed 000, our version of 911. It rang, and I had to resist the urge to call out in glee. It rang, and kept ringing. "Come on, come on, please answer," I murmured to myself, trying to control my breathing and heartbeat. Both were loud and rapid, pounding in my ears. It kept ringing with no answer, and that moment I realized I'll be facing it alone. I held my knife ready. "Okay, you've got this. You've got this." I encouraged myself, slowly crawled toward the stairs, and waited at the top of them. Downstairs, through the curtains, I saw the figure move from one window to the next, peering inside, and occasionally tapping against the window. The tapping became loud, demanding knocking. A bellowing roar emitted from its mouth, and it went to the door, trying to turn the locked handle. The knocking came again, loud, and the only sound other than my heartbeat. "Yeah. Stay out, you fucking asshole." I gripped my teeth. It bellowed again, and started slamming its body against the wooden surface of the door. It didn't take long before it broke the lock and burst through. It stepped inside, looked from one room to the other on the spot. I slowly moved backward, tried to hide, and it made several quieter sounds now. I crawled backwards into the bedroom again, opened the closet and hid among the clothes in there. I heard it walk from room to room, no doubt hunting me, and tried to stay as silent as possible. I had a foolish hope that it would finally get bored, or find some other prey to go hunt instead. Through the crack, I saw it enter the room. It had no facial features or any clothing. It reminded me of a grey alien that had been stretched, but it was bulky. There was a distinct smell that made me gag. It was sickly sweet, so sweet it was disgusting. It stopped at the bed, lifted the blankets in hopes of finding a sleeping person. Finding none, it threw the blankets away angrily, as though it was mad it didn't end up finding me. It stopped at the window, looking outside, and pulled open the curtains to get a better look. While it was distracted, I knew I didn't have much time left. I readied the knife, opened the closet door, stabbed up into its neck, and it let out a bone-chilling scream of pain and anger. It roughly pushed me out of the way, causing me to drop the knife, and I screamed. It touched the wound as a squirt of black blood burst into the air. "Stay back! Don't come any closer!" I called out at it. It held its hand over at me, palm up, and seemed to wait. It grabbed a shirt from the floor, lifted it and tied it around its neck. Why was it taking so long to try to kill me? I wasn't going to wait for it to try again. I stood up, scurried to pick up the knife, and turned to run out the door, only for it to grab my arm and try to pull me back. I screamed, yanking my arm, and we struggled on the ground together. It kept trying to grab my wrists. I twisted at a sharp angle and plunged the knife into its sealed mouth. I thought it was going to scream. I stabbed it again and again. More bursts of black blood. splashed me in the face, and coated my clothing. I kept trying to grab my wrist to stop me. Driven by survival instinct, I kept going until there was no movement from it. It finally lay limp on the floor, surrounded by a thick pool of blood that clung to everything it touched. I sat on the floor and stared at my hands. From the wrist down, they were coated. I licked my lips and I tasted the blood. It didn't taste like blood. I stood up, ran to the bathroom and spat in the sink. I turned the faucet on to clear the sink. There was a stream of water coming from it, and I started to scrub my hands. None of it came off. I squirted liquid soap onto my wrists again and again and started to scrub again. I used a washcloth and kept scrubbing. My skin was becoming raw, but it wasn't off me yet. I used my loofah to try to get it off, but nothing was working. Come on. Get off. Get off me. I winced, unable to stop. I curled my fingertips around and started using my fingernails to tear at the skin. No matter what I did, it remained. I could feel the burn and the red of my blood as I scrubbed. I kept going, so focused on my task that I was dead to the world around me. Come on, come on. I let out a cry of victory when its blood was pulled and revealed pink flesh. Finally, I stopped. It was far from perfect, but it was good enough. I wrapped them in bandages, trying to stop the blood, and I did. I walked to the window and looked outside again. Still nighttime, and still so quiet. Where were the people? I lifted my phone and called my boyfriend. This time it went through, but unfortunately, it went straight to voicemail. Still, I didn't want to miss my chance. Hey, Jeff, I miss you and I'm getting really worried now. It's nighttime during the day and there is no one around. I don't know what to do. Something came into the house to try to hurt me. Don't worry, it's gone now. I love you. Please get in touch with me. Where are you? Bye. I hung up, stared at my phone, and wished he would instantly call me back. My phone had no missed calls or messages. I didn't like this. I changed out of my blood-soaked clothing, whimpered when my arms brushed against something, and quietly snuck downstairs. The door was still off its hinges, and I didn't like how any of those things could walk through if they wanted to. The cool air entered my room, and a soft mist came through. It gave my home a haunted feeling. It would have been perfect for Halloween. I put the door up again, using a table to hold it up and hoped from a distance it would look like a closed door. But up close, it wouldn't matter. I grabbed the coffee table, flipping it over, and letting the items fall to the floor before putting it up against the door. It didn't look great, but I felt much better that I did it. I went into the kitchen for something to eat. Just a little bit of normalcy in the chaos. I opened the fridge and it was completely empty. I was going to do a grocery shop in a couple of days, but there was still supposed to be food in the fridge. What the hell? I opened up the freezer. It too was bare. There weren't even ice trays in there. This didn't make sense. I opened up all the cupboards, one after another, to see what was in there. There was nothing. Not even the canned goods that would live in there forever. Those too were gone. Shit. What am I going to do? I asked myself. I could drive into town again to see if there was anything in there. Or I could go to my neighbor's house to see if they had anything. I didn't like the idea of potentially stealing from my neighbors. I looked for my purse. I'd leave some money behind for them, and a note apologizing for taking what I needed. I hoped they would understand. Maybe I would run into them and we could help each other. I took a bag, my purse, and looked out the back door. The backyard was empty, all except for that strange mist swirling around. I unlocked the back door silently, closed it behind me while taking the key, and went to my next door neighbor's house. I peeked through the windows. It was dark, but there was no movement that I could see. The house was deserted. Even their pets were nowhere to be found. I wasn't sure if that comforted or frightened me. I didn't know if it was a good idea to knock or not. I tapped my fingers against the door and waited. Nothing. I tried the doorknob and to my surprise, it was open. I opened the door. In the silent home, it made an incredibly loud creak that made me wince. I walked into the home. Nothing looked different from the last time I was there. It looked as though my neighbors got up and left. There were even bowls of cereal on the dining table. I lifted it up and saw it was moldy. It smelled terrible and I put it back down. It had only been a day. How could the food get so bad so quickly? I instantly went to the fridge and opened it. I gagged at the foul smell. The vegetables and the meat had gone bad. I slammed the fridge shut in disgust. I tried the cupboards next. Everything was infested with some kind of insects. All the cans were swollen or had already popped. I groaned, closed the cupboards, and I didn't want to stay away from the house for too long. I looked out at the windows at the last house and saw what looked to be shadow figures walking across the front of the street. There were 2 taller ones and 2 shorter ones. They weren't a defined shadow. They would fade and return again. They seemed to be looking around. After my last encounter with something strange, I didn't want to deal with them either. Empty-handed, I went to the back door, climbed the fence back into my backyard, and rushed back into my house. I locked the door, wasting no time to make myself safe. Could I even kill a shadow person? I didn't want to be put in a position where I would have to find out. I rushed back up the stairs again. The corpse of whatever, it was still there, but now it looked to be drained of blood. I was getting hungry. I knew I shouldn't, but if I didn't, it would go bad and it would stink up my house. I also would need to eat at some point, but eating whatever the hell this was? I wrapped it in a sheet to try to preserve what was left of my home, dragged the body downstairs into the kitchen, and placed it on the kitchen table. It reminded me of an Egyptian mummy, all wrapped up. I got out the carvery kit. Normally my boyfriend would be the one doing the carving of roasts. Okay, I better get started. Should I separate the organs? I murmured to myself. I turned on the faucet and to my relief, perfectly normal water came out. I unwrapped it and was finally able to see the damage I had inflicted. I didn't realize I had it in me to cause that much suffering to someone. The skin was like a thin layer of leather. It felt nice. If you got a leather lounge or pair of shoes with the same texture, you'd imagine it was good quality. I started skinning it. It was certainly sloppy and it wasn't the best. I was proud of myself with the final result. I hung it over the couch before going back to my task. I carefully sliced the stomach open. I vaguely remembered something about being careful, about not slicing the organs or something. When I reached the stomach cavity, cutting through muscle, I noticed it didn't look anything like what I remembered from health class. There looked to be only one organ, a large blood clot. I poked it, and it felt like jelly from my touch. I lifted it carefully and put it in the sink before I started the rest of my work. The head, hands, upper and lower arms, followed by the feet, lower legs, and upper legs. I was breathing heavy by the time I was done. It was a lot of work. I wrapped the pieces up in cling foil, placing each one except a hand into the fridge. I stared at it. My stomach growled from hunger. I slapped the kitchen bench and wondered to myself if this was something I really wanted to do. It wasn't like I was purposely going out of my way to eat this. I lifted the hand and took a little nibble on the finger. If I closed my eyes, I could forget it was humanoid, whatever the fuck it was. It didn't taste bad, just raw, like a mixture of beef and pork. The meat had barely any fat on it, and I found some oil, some spices, and if I was going to eat this, I was going to make it nice. I turned on the stove and got the fry pan ready. The sizzle and warmth were the only things that mattered. I stared at it, flipped it over, and waited for it to finish cooking. I plated it. Since there was absolutely nothing left in the house, just the hand. I nibbled on it before taking bites. There wasn't a lot of meat on it, but it was delicious. The feeling of having something warm in my stomach, when it was bone-chilling cold, made it worthwhile. I chewed down to the bones and disposed of the remains. I started hearing a low moaning throughout the house. I took the knife, held it ready, and my arms itched from the scratching. They started to ooze a yellowy pink liquid through the bandages. The groaning moved from one room to another. I tried to follow the sound, worried I'd find more shadow people, or something like what broke in. It went from one room to another, leading me from the left side of the house to the right. It felt like it was spinning around me, never letting me get too close, and I felt dizzy. I leaned back against the wall to try to steady myself when I heard whispering coming from the walls. It was one thing to have danger outside, but inside the bones of your home? No. Shut up, I murmured. The whispering was joined by scratching inside the walls. I smacked the walls to try to stop it. It stopped, but my wrists felt like they were burning. I tried to scratch inside them with my stained hands, fingernails trying to get under the skin. I need to clean them. I went upstairs and opened the bathroom door. All the faucets had been left on. The water had spilled over the edge and flowed onto the floor. My shoes made wet sounds as I took steps. I turned the sink faucets off, unplugged the sink, and heard the sound of the water slowly pour down the drain. I couldn't look at my reflection in the mirror, keeping my gaze down at the floor, and reached down into the water in the bathtub to get the plug. The water was thick, like jello. It clung to my arms, and strangely hard to get through. I lifted the plug through the sludge. The water stank like it had been sitting there. Green mold rested on the surface. It made loud, gluggy sounds as it finally drained and left twisted, hard lumps inside. I nearly threw up with the vile smell. I rested on the edge of the bathtub, and I could have sworn I saw the outline of a humanoid shape. I jumped up, nearly falling over, and using the sink to hold myself up. "What is going on?" I murmured. I got up and left, placing a couple of towels at the door to try to keep any remaining water inside. I heard the groaning this time coming from downstairs. Whatever it was, I wasn't going to let it get a chance to corner me. I stumbled down the stairs. They felt uneven and warped. Was there some kind of natural disaster that I didn't realize? I then heard the moaning coming from inside the fridge. The only thing that was in there was the chopped up pieces of whatever it was that was in there. There was a rattling sound from inside the fridge. I went to pick up my knife when I realized I must have left it upstairs in the bathroom. I opened the cupboards to try to find another. All the steak knives were gone. Even the ones from the carving kit were nowhere to be found. What the hell was happening? I needed a weapon. I couldn't do it alone. I could feel something moving inside my wrists, twisting and turning. I scratched them again. I could feel the blood and flesh under my nails. My hands were still stained. I pulled the bandages off and yelled. They stuck to my skin, or rather, they had become my skin. I looked at it. The fabric smelled terrible, and the moaning from the fridge grew louder. The sharp hitting sounds against the fridge door grew more rapid. I opened the fridge door wide open. The remains were moving. Only this time, they looked human. Sure, a skinned human. Eyelidless eyes. Scared, with bright blue eyes darted around. Terrified before they locked on mine. They looked so familiar. It tried to speak with a torn, twisted mouth, and only garbled sounds came out. I lifted the head out and placed it on the kitchen table. I couldn't do anything else about the other body parts. Hey, it's okay, I comforted, not entirely sure why. I needed to make things right. I had to fix things. There were shadows moving at the windows. I stopped in my tracks and peeked outside. The shadow people were walking around my house again, peering through the windows, occasionally calling out and tapping or knocking on the windows. The eyes of the head went wild, frantically looking around, and I cradled it against my chest as I knelt on the wet floor. Are you there? What was that sound? It didn't make any sense. I took the head and ran upstairs to find somewhere safe. I heard them clambering and trying to move the various items that blockaded the open, damaged door. There were too many of them to fight, and I wouldn't be able to hold them off on my own. I ran up to the bedroom, where I killed the head, I guess. I saw the semi-dried blood pool on the floor, and it started a loud scream. I held the mouth, or what had been a mouth, shut with my fingers. I went to hide in the closet. The pain and wriggling in my wrist became unbearable. "Where are you?" There was that weird sound again. There were black worms or leeches poking through the wounds, and bandages on my forearms. I scratched and pulled them out, again and again, ripping and pulling them out, scratching them, tearing at them, desperately trying to get them out. The sound of rushed footsteps through the house, radio static with voices trying to come through with a variety of pitches and sounds. The static became unbearable. I covered my ears, trying to block out the sounds and the noise. My ears felt like they were going to burst. They were coming for me. I kept scratching my forearms. I couldn't stop now, and I heard them at the top of the stairs. Armored aliens moved through the house. They were armored in blue, held something in their hands, and I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of killing me or taking me alive. I kicked open the closet door. They put their hands out to me and tried to get a hold of me. I leapt for the window. I could feel the prick of glass against my skin, falling through it, and I landed on a piece of concrete. My skull cracked at the back, but that wasn't the last thing I saw or heard. It wasn't nighttime anymore. The mist had dispersed. The sky was finally blue, with a few soft clouds, and I could feel the warmth of the sun on my face. There was a concerned human face looked down at me. Soon they were joined by many, and I could finally hear the murmur of their words. I never noticed how beautiful the sky looked. I lifted my torn and mutilated arm toward the sun. At least at the end, things were good again, before I breathed my last breath. I hope you enjoy this story. What did you think of it? Let me know what you thought in the comments section down below. Don't forget to stab the like button, subscribe, hit the bell and leave a comment. This video is made with the support of my incredible channel members, Patreon subscribers, and all my viewers. Thank you so much for supporting me. Don't forget to check out my social media accounts below, including my merch. Stay safe, my little spooklings. And remember, I'll be watching you.